So the agenda we have for today is to discuss about the AWS and the key things which happened in AWS this year and what exactly is the plans for the next upcoming year. That's a whole thing. And some changes which we have for the AWS certifications and services. Okay, this is the agenda. So the current position of AWS in the public cloud market and the key announcements made by AWS. Actually, there's a lot of things, but we are basically giving you some few things to give you some understanding of the changes, and then what all AWS certifications are changing as for now. And I'll give you more idea about the AWS Certified Security Specialty Certification, and we'll have a QA session. Okay, that's our whole plan. So let's start now. Okay, so the role of AWS in the public cloud market. The next one, the current thing which we're going to discuss is about the role of AWS in the public cloud market. So let's say, for example, when we say the word cloud computing, we basically say the word a trio, right? We say a trio, like we have a AWS, we have Azure, we have Google, we have the trio. But now what happens is, in the modern scenarios, we may have to restructure this trios. Why? Because you know that the AWS is the cloud platform which started initially like on 2006 AWS started and 2008 Azure started. So basically what happens is AWS is the company or the organization which give the primary change in the cloud computing or public cloud market. What happens is AWS has bring a lot of advancements and a lot of things in this public cloud market over all these years. And I will tell you in this webinar, I'll tell you basically what all things are key to AWS. And before I start, I'll give you my introduction. My name is Krish. I'll be your instructor for this whole webinar. And about my profile, I am certified on various cloud platforms and worked with various companies worldwide. And I have an experience of around 16 plus years focusing on cloud computing from 2010. I'm a consultant and trainer for a lot of companies worldwide. That's about my profile. So as we know that in the case of cloud computing, we have the AWS as the market leader always. So every year when you basically look into the market strategy, we will see that AWS is basically leading the market. And immediately after AWS, what happens is we have the Azure and then we have the Google. So what happens is in quarter three of the 2020, what happened was we have basically usually what happens is we have only three providers in the market, or we have three key leaders in the market. Even if we have a lot more cloud providers, we have the three leaders in the market called as AWS, Azure, and Google. But now what happens is we basically have more. Like for example, we have this Alibaba also hitting the market very much. So what happens is we have a lot of new cloud providers coming up, and a lot of new cloud providers are basically giving us value on the market. And still Amazon and Microsoft continue to be the market leader for almost half of the worldwide market. And as per the latest standards or latest updates, AWS is almost having 33% of the cloud infrastructure market share. And Azure is almost some 18 to 19%, and the other basically things are growing. So what we have to focus here is whenever we talk about any cloud service providers, we have to understand why we have to basically go to the cloud service providers, or are they, how much value they are giving us. Okay, so we have Amazon, we have Azure, we have Google, we have a lot of cloud providers. So out of all these things, if I ask somebody which cloud provider do you prefer, so people are saying multiple cloud platforms. Definitely in the cloud platform, that is the next thing I won't tell you. In the cloud platform, when I ask somebody what is the key things or which cloud platform do you use mostly, people will say AWS. But now what happens is when I ask somebody which cloud providers do you use, they will say that we're using multiple cloud providers. So multi-cloud is the key change in the cloud platform in 2020. The key change which happened to cloud computing industry in 2020 is the multi-cloud strategy. Like what happens is the organizations have started using multiple cloud platforms. Like for example, let's say it's almost like there was AWS, there is Azure, there is Google. So all the organizations are using nowadays multiple cloud platforms. Okay, that's it. So out of which the primary challenge when we talk about any kind of cloud platform or any kind of strategy is to have a multi-cloud strategy and to have a hybrid cloud strategy. So what happens is the problem which personally we found in AWS for a long time is that AWS is not giving us more option to give us a proper and effective hybrid cloud platform or hybrid cloud strategy, and AWS is not having a more flexibility to have a multi-cloud architecture. But this year was a game changer for AWS. In this year, what happens was AWS has introduced a lot more services and allows us to integrate more and more effectiveness to our hybrid and multi-cloud strategy. So I'll give you one example, team, why we have a hybrid cloud strategy in the market now. Why? Because let's say, for example, in 2020, the main thing which we know is the COVID pandemic. Because of the COVID pandemic, the primary change happened in the market is that everybody is basically moved to work from home culture. So people are currently working from home and they don't want to maintain or manage an infrastructure. Okay, they don't want to maintain and manage an infrastructure. So what happens? Because people don't want to manage or maintain the infrastructure, what happened was almost every companies nowadays, almost 80% of the companies worldwide nowadays has transitioned to cloud platform. And this year there was almost 34% increase in the utilization of cloud services more than on premises. And out of which the company which benefited mostly is Amazon, AWS. The company which benefited maximum is AWS. So these changes also many people has adopted the AWS model. But definitely I basically agree with that. We have a lot of cloud providers or very good players in the market, and either Azure or Google or Alibaba or every cloud provider is basically having a very good growth percentage. And when you see the growth percentage this year, the highest growth rate is basically predicted to Alibaba, Google, and Microsoft. And Amazon also have a very good growth percentage. When compared to the other two providers, Amazon is a little bit less. That's all. Okay, so I'll just tell you some key features you have to understand when you move to a cloud service providers. First of all, you know that when you basically move to a lot of cloud providers, you will see something called as the cost, right? When you move to cloud providers, the key thing which you will basically see is the cost. And more than the cost, you will see a lot of other factors, GRC, or let's say compliance factors, or data residency requirements, and the security and the other features, the integration options with multiple cloud platforms and all. So AWS offers you a very much effectiveness for all these features when you move to cloud platform. And basically those people who want to migrate from their existing infrastructure, AWS has introduced a new feature called as AWS Outpost. Let's say, for example, I still want to use my on-prem infrastructure. I basically worry about the data residency requirements. So team, what is data residency requirements? Data residency. So data residency requirements means that, let's say, for example, I have to make sure that my data is stored in a specific location. Like, for example, I want to ensure that my data is stored in a specific location. Like, for example, India, UK, US. Like, I want to make sure my data is in a specific location. So people basically worry about that when they go to cloud providers. Like when I basically go to AWS, when I basically go to Azure or any public cloud providers, the primary concern of people is how they can basically meet the data residency requirements. And for those people who still want to use the cloud services and the features of cloud in their on-premises, AWS has introduced a new service called as AWS Outpost. So AWS Outpost, even if it's introduced in 2019 December, the very important changes happened for AWS Outpost is basically in the 2020. So what happens is, I'll give an example. Whenever people move to any cloud service providers, like not only Amazon or any cloud service providers, the primary concern people have is, as we discussed, they want to have more performance. Like we can say, they want to have single digit millisecond latency they are expecting. And definitely the thing which we discussed about the data location as well. So basically in these kind of scenarios, what happens is, this particular Outpost service, it's a device actually. First of all, understand that AWS Outpost is a device, and this is designed to operate within a constant and consistent connection between your Outpost device, which you place in the on-premises in the AWS cloud platform. So what happens? We can basically have our infrastructure in my on-premise itself, plus having the ability to use AWS Management Console and AWS services. I'll give an example, team. Let's say, for example, you go to the AWS cloud provider. You can go to the AWS Management Console and go to the Outpost service and order a device. Let me show you a simple example here. So this is an example for an AWS Management Console. So what happens is, you can basically go to the AWS Outpost service like this. See this AWS Outpost. And once we open the AWS Outpost service, see, I can basically click on Create Outpost. So what happens is, just click on Create Outpost. And once you do that, you can basically order devices. Once you basically select the sites and everything you want, you can basically order the devices. You have wide variety of AWS Outpost ordering options. Say this, let me show you that devices list here. See, you can basically order for any location nowadays. It's basically getting available in India also. So what happens is you can basically get multiple devices with different configurations. So once you order the device, Amazon will basically ship the device to your your data center or your infrastructure, and there will be a team with that particular device which will help us to implement the AWS Outpost and set up the AWS Outpost to work with the Amazon Web Services. And like the same way you do in the AWS Management Console, like the same way you interact in the AWS region, you can basically interact with the on-premises AWS platform. Like what happens is, let's say, for example, I want to make sure my data is in my control only, or my data is in my premise only. So what I can do, I can use AWS Outpost. So by using AWS Console, by using AWS services, but I am storing everything in my console or my on-premises. That's a feature of AWS Outpost. And definitely now this was basically available only for the higher level companies, or let's say the top end companies in the market. But now what happens is they are also giving us very small or very small devices to meet the requirements of basic customers. Okay, that's about the AWS Outpost. And as Manthan asked, there's one very important point: is it available for small companies? From 2021 onwards, they are basically planning to give you single rack kind of things. Like you can see, this is just more lesser size than a ATM machine, right? It's a very small one. Let's say normal size than an ATM machine. Like, so what happens is when you have a AWS Outpost device, like you can basically place it anywhere. Okay, that's a very important question. Is this not a vendor lock-in strategy? Definitely not. Why? Because that is a very important concern for any companies. So team, those who are not familiar with the vendor lock-in concept, I'm just telling you what is the word name called as vendor lock-in. So vendor lock-in means basically you go to a cloud service provider, and due to any reason, if you're not able to move from that cloud provider to another cloud provider, that's what you call as vendor lock-in. You're stuck with the wrong provider. Like basically now you're in AWS. Tomorrow, if you want to move to Azure, because of any reason, because of contractual issues, because of the cost issues, because of any reason, if you're not able to move, you're having a vendor lock-in. But even if you're using AWS Outpost or not, it's like you are using it in the AWS Management Console. Whenever you want, AWS and Azure offers you option to basically download or basically retrieve your data back. So vendor lock-in won't be a problem here if you plan accordingly. Definitely, it's based on your planning. If you plan properly, vendor lock-in won't be a problem. Like if you have a very good strategic perspective while moving to cloud, we can completely avoid vendor lock-in, even if I use Outpost. And Outpost is not your outright purchasing. Don't forget, outright or any kind of devices in Azure also, we are basically not giving this outright purchase. We are basically giving it in the perspective of a, let's say, year contract. That's all. Okay, that's it. That's the whole thing. And the next difference I want to basically tell you is about the AWS Cloud Shell. So those people who are familiar with Azure will know there is an Azure Cloud Shell. In Azure, we have something called as Azure Cloud Shell. And so team, let me just give you an introduction about it. So what happens is we have multiple mechanisms which we can access the cloud platform. And most people know that we have a management in AWS, we have a AWS Management Console. In Azure, we have a Azure portal. So what happens is people basically have familiarity with these things. Like the same way we have these things, we have something called as a AWS CLI, and we have a Azure CLI. Then we have a AWS PowerShell, Azure PowerShell, etc. Okay, so what happens is you have to install an agent on your laptop or your computer which you're working, and you have to open the AWS CLI. Like for example, let's say I can show you my AWS CLI. So I'm opening my command prompt here. See, if I type AWS plus enter, I have already installed it. See, I can basically put the commands here. I can basically do all the activities like creating instances, creating storages. I can do all the activities here. Even some activities I can perform only in this command prompt. But the main concerns people had is in Azure, what happens is if you basically want to do some activities without installing the agent, you have an option called as Azure Cloud Shell. In the Azure portal itself, you have a command line option where you can type the commands and basically do some activities. But that was missing in AWS. But now what happens is in AWS, they have introduced a new thing called as AWS Cloud Shell. Like the same way in Azure, AWS has introduced something called as AWS Cloud Shell, but it's not available in all the regions. I'm switching to North Virginia region here. So in the North Virginia, you can see a new option here. See this, we can see a new option here. See this, this is what we call as AWS Cloud Shell. So by using the AWS Cloud Shell, you don't have to sign in again. Just click on this AWS Cloud Shell and they will open you a command line window here. See this, they will basically open you a command line window here where you can type the commands like the same way you do in the on-premises AWS CLI. See this? So instead of basically installing everything in the on-premises, or instead of basically installing everything in the on-premise, you can basically have it in the thing. So it's a browser-based shell which is available for the AWS Management Console. Once you log into the AWS Management Console, what happens? The Cloud Shell will basically give a session to the customer, and we can basically put the commands, and it's already pre-installed, and it is powered by Amazon Linux. It's basically powered by Amazon Linux, and it's pre-authenticated. So it makes us easy to securely manage and interact and do all the normal things which we do in the command line. I'll give an example. So we have an option called as S3 bucket lock. Okay, bucket lock or MFA. So MFA can be bucket MFA can be only done with the help of AWS Cloud command line. So that command line bucket MFA and all, we can do it with the AWS Cloud Shell as well. Okay, that's it. So basically now they are planning to introduce support for PowerShell as also as a part of it, but in the upcoming days. But as for now, it's only available in certain regions. Okay, that's it. You can basically upload your scripting files. You can basically run script. You can save the things and all. It's having a lot of options like that, like this. You can basically click on this particular option, and it will open the AWS Cloud Shell. And in the back end, it will be taking the storage also. It will be taking some storage, almost 1 GB of storage it is reserving by default. It will keep on increasing. Don't worry about it. Okay, that's it. Any queries in this team? AWS Cloud Shell, any queries? And those people who already know it will know that. Basically, what happens is those people who already work with the Azure will know that, or AWS also will know that. When you basically go to AWS Cloud Shell or any kind of this command line interface like that, for certain activities, we can only rely on this. And once you start using it, you will be much more confident about this. And you can do a lot of activities with this. Okay, that's it. And the next one is, the next major change I felt in the 2020 is the AI ML services. AWS has introduced a lot of services, a very huge amount, a lot of services in this 2020. So what happens is, I'll give an example, team. So previously what happens is 2020 was the year of machine learning and artificial intelligence. What happens was we have a lot of cloud providers in the competition for AI ML services, but now AWS is mastering it by introducing a lot of services. For example, let's say when you basically go to AWS service, like I'll give an example for the service called a Sage. So you have this Alexa device, you have other machine learning devices. So what happens? You have a lot of devices which is based on this AI ML strategy, right? So you can basically give different models or create different models and basically make them learn new technologies or new strategies. Like I'll give an example. So we have an Alexa device. When I have an Alexa device, what happens? This device will basically be your assistant for a lot of activities. So you can basically give them skills for YouTube. You can basically give them skills to respond to your queries for certain activities. So like the same way, the AWS and other cloud providers machine learning models are helping us a lot. I'll give an example. Team, anyone can tell me why we have to integrate machine learning in cloud platform? Why? Because basically machine learning requires a lot of computational capability and lot of other performance and storage requirements. So what happens, as we want to have a lot of computational capabilities and performance and storage requirements, we basically need a location, or we basically need something which can provide us in a effective cost and performance also. That is why people basically move to cloud. I'll give a simple example, team. I'll give a simple example. So I'll give you a scenario also. So basically there is a service called as AWS Recognition. See this, AWS Recognition, the simplest service I can show you. So what happens is, when people basically, I'll give an example. So I have found that, so some people basically, when they host some websites and they want people to upload some images, they want some algorithms or they want some mechanisms to identify what image the people are uploading, and if there is any kind of unlawful contents or any kind of malicious contents, they want to remove it. So what happens, we can use this kind of services by integrating the AWS Recognition with your code. What happens, this can find out the image and identify the various devices. See this, various things in the image. See this, like this, for example. So this particular picture, they are identifying vehicles or the like, and they are basically identifying people, humans and all. Like the same way, we have something called as a image moderation. Image moderation means basically I can compare images. Or let's say what happens is, let's say if I'm uploading an image which is having some kind of adult content or any kind of violent images, what happens, this particular image moderation feature can identify that this image can contain some kind of explicit or suggestive adult contents. So what happens, they will basically stop the image from displaying on the website, or basically will block the upload operation. Like the same way, we can identify people like this. We can basically identify the expression of people. We can basically compare images. We can do a lot of things using these kind of services. This is just an example. So this year was basically a lot of advantages or a lot of advancements came for this AWS or AIML services. And in 2021, the key technologies predicted are, first of all, containers. Containers will be more booming this year, especially in cloud platform. Almost all the containers will basically move to cloud platform. The second most important technology in the market now is AIML services, because it is basically helping a lot in healthcare also. Because in healthcare it's helping a lot, this particular AIML services are also booming the market, and this year will be the key to this particular technology. Like this, we have more and more other features as well, upcoming things. I'm just giving you some examples like this. And AWS has introduced a lot more things. AWS has introduced a lot more things like this. See, definitely yes. Basically, when you go for healthcare, right, you want to see healthcare is the most critical benefited thing from this AIML. Like for example, let's say by analyzing the patient health. But let's say for example, we have nowadays we have smart pacemakers. We have smart insulin pumps. We have a lot of devices like that. So the AIML platforms can nowadays get data from multiple kind of devices, including your smartwatches, and give you an idea about your healthcare. And there was a revolutionizing change this particular 2020. By I think May or June, one person from UK has developed a new device which can which can basically predict this cardiac arrest and everything much more efficiently than any other existing models using the AIML services. So nowadays, for every industry, this can help us a lot. So by analyzing the latest trends, or by analyzing the latest impactful features, this can basically predict a lot of things. And it is all depends on how much the devices will learn. And these are the common services nowadays available in the Amazon. And see this, we have a health lake, we have a monotron, we have all these things basically came out this year only. All these things basically came out this year only. Decomposer is a very interesting one. When you basically get time, please go through it. It can be very much interesting. So like this, okay. And I strongly recommend before, definitely Azure is also giving us a lot of services, but then after this third quarter and fourth quarter of 2020, when you compare with the third and fourth quarter of 2020, Azure is basically having less service. Like Amazon is having 50% more services and more efficiency in the AIML services when compared to Azure. I have seen some reports somewhere in the internet. That's fine. Okay. So Azure is also booming the market. Definitely, they're also having a lot of services, but still now AWS is offering more customized options. And I strongly recommend you basically go through the AWS document updates and all. If you want to basically the AWS updates, it's like this. Just type AWS updates 2020. You will be able to see this like this. See this. They will basically give you announcements. And I strongly recommend, if it's possible, please go through the AWS reInvent 2020 updates. So they have made a lot of announcements for this year. See this, you'll be able to understand what all things are basically new into AWS. A lot of things are there actually. And I'll give you one more thing. Basically, it's a more technical. What happens is AWS has introduced more efficient firewall technologies, more efficient IDS IPS systems in cloud platform also, and planning to basically make it even better this year as well. So every year they are planning to have more, but this year I have seen that they have introduced more than 100 services, new 100 features they have designed or they have hosted this year, and expected to basically become active a lot of things by next year first quarter also. Okay, that's it. So now we'll discuss a little more about the AWS certification updates. So we have a lot of certifications in the market now, you know that, right? Why AWS certifications? That is one thing which we have to understand. So Krish, people basically ask me this question. Krish, when you basically go for AWS, can we basically rely on DUMS or basically these questions? That is the worst thing I always think about and talk about certifications. Because why? Because when people, okay, definitely that can help us pass the exam. But now what happens is that there is a very much interesting change came in the market. And do you know that there was a certificate, there is a certification called as RHC. This is a certification called as RHC by Red Hat Certified Engineer. Can you tell me what is the advantage of the certification, anyone? If you want to pass the exam, you have to show how you can implement things in the cloud platform. You can't answer the question simply. You have to basically implement what you know. Like for example, if you want to pass the exam, you have to first of all show them that this is how you have to implement things. And Azure has also done that. Basically, what happens was Azure had some exams. Even when I wrote the exam and all, basically for 103 and this other certifications on Azure, they also had a little bit hands-on when they started. But because of this COVID pandemic, they have stopped it from April 2020. From April 2020, they have basically stopped it because this COVID pandemic, they were not able to continue the lab scenarios. So the exam was limited to MCQs, multiple choice questions. But now AWS has announced that there is a new version of exam coming up for the AWS Certified SysOps Administrator. There is a new version of exam called as AWS SysOps Administrator SOA C02 coming up in the first quarter of 2021. And the best part is this exam is having labs. You have, if you want to pass the exam, you have to do the labs. See this, they will give you scenarios also. That's the best thing. And it will, to be honest, it will basically make people more easy to pass the exam. Plus people, we can basically get, or they can basically, if you know the things how to do it in the cloud platform, you can pass the exam. See this, you have multiple choice questions and multiple things and all, but like the same way you have labs also. See this, you have a lot of tasks you can perform in the AWS management console or AWS CLI. If you can do that, you can pass the exam. That's a very important thing in the update coming up. So basically they are planning to implement this kind of lab scenario to every exam by 2021, but it's basically yet to announce. Basically a lot of things are upcoming. Okay, that's it. The next key change which came to the market is basically, out of, these are the list of certification which we currently have in the market. This is changing, as we discussed, this is changing to a newer version of the exam, and this certification is ending. This certification is not there. So basically people, some of the people took this exam, but they have still validity for this, but now they have basically stopped this certification. After March 2020, March 21st, 2021, you will not be able to write this exam. Okay, Alexa skill builder specialty. And one more change is there. Basically they don't want to basically focus on a single technology, so they basically made this exam to something called as a data analytics specialty. That's the three changes which we have. So they have changing the SysOps administrator exam to a newer version with the labs also. Then they are stopping the exam called as Alexa skill builder specialty, and now they are basically having a new thing called as data analytics specialty. And some of the hottest certifications in AWS, what I felt in the market is, let me show you. These are the hottest certifications now in the market in AWS. First of all, definitely the architect level things. So definitely these are exams which basically I found the first in list. And basically, especially this exam is a bit challenging. Why? Because if you go to any specialty exam or any other exam, you can focus on certain things. Like security exam, you can focus on security. If you basically go for machine learning, you can focus on machine learning. But if you want to pass the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Professional exam, you have to learn everything in depth. You must get a very much in-depth hands-on skills if you want to pass the exam. And all the questions are nowadays more and more scenario-based and more challenging. You have to get a very good hands-on for anything. Then the next most important exam I found in the market nowadays sitting is AWS machine learning specialty and security specialty, and this also, of course. So these are something which I found very much demanding in the market. Why? Because nowadays we have a lot of demands for this, and this is comparatively new certification came in 2020, and people are basically using it very much, very much changing a lot. Okay, that's it. So a few more things. The next one is, so people ask me, Krish, is it mandatory to have certifications? Most people ask me this question, that is it basically mandatory to have certifications? I have seen this, but I've shown this particular slide in my last webinar. Getting the certification is very good. Definitely it can give you more value, but getting the certification is just giving you an identity or just giving you an entry point. But more than certification, and nowadays what happens is, like the latest trends in Microsoft and every companies, they have something called as the skills. Like every companies nowadays are basically trying to identify the skills actually. So how much more experienced you can be, that much more you can do. And basically I'm planning for a session which can basically cover the more and more scenarios which can be expected in the interviews and all. Okay, we'll be notifying you all on that. So what happens is, more than, which is preferred for insights professionals. Definitely, if you are basically want to move to cloud platform initially, you can basically go for the AWS Solutions Architect. But if you want to specifically move to a cloud platform, like for example, let's say we have a lot of job roles in the cloud market. I'll give an example. So even I'm planning for a new webinar for that 4 hours actually. So what happens is, we have security in cloud platform, we have machine learning in cloud platform, we have DevOps in cloud platform, we have architecture in cloud platforms. We have multiple job roles you can focus on. Serverless in cloud platform, serverless, a lot of things are there. But at the same time, it's your decision which you have to focus on. And if you basically, yes, Rahul, if you want to basically go for security, if you want to basically focus on the AWS security, you have to go for the AWS Certified Security Specialty exam. one of the most important certifications in the market, AWS Certified Security Specialty exam. But I have seen one challenge in this exam is that this is the most, and I have got all the people who wrote the exam passed this year. This 2020, we got all the people who basically wrote the exam. Everybody passed the exam. But what I won't tell you is, in this exam, the topics are getting added up. Don't forget, the topic is getting added up. I have seen many people basically rely on some textbook and all, but understand that this exam is getting a lot of, like for example, AWS has introduced a new thing called as AWS Security Hub, like the Azure Security Hub. So a lot of AWS detective is there. A lot of services came up in this particular topic. So before you go to the certification, always ensure that you are up to date with the latest services and topics. And most people ask one query is that when AWS introduce a new service, will it immediately be there in the exam? No. Once AWS introduce a new service, it will be in the exam only after 6 months. Okay, if basically you are a person from a non-technical background, if you want to move to cloud platform, you have a certification called as AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. So AWS, let's say for example, you are a person who is managing the cloud platform. You're a person who is basically managing a team, or you're a person who is basically managing the accounts and cost management. So for those people who want to have a understanding of the cloud platform, the best one is AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. You can basically go to the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. For others who want to specify or specifically get a job in the cloud platform like security, or let's say machine learning or database and all, you can focus on the certifications. Previously, what happens is, if you want to basically go for any exams, you have to first of all pass the associate level, then the professional level, then the specialty. But now what happens is, we can focus on that certification specifically. Like for example, let's say, I'll give an example. Let's say I'm a person who is basically interested in security. If I'm a person who is interested in security, I can focus on the AWS Certified Security Specialty and the Azure AZ 500. But I'll tell you one more thing, team. This is something which I wanted to tell you. So most people ask me, Krish, for working in AWS security or cloud security, is it enough for that? I don't say it's enough. It's purely based on your current profile, your existing skills and all. I'll give a simple example, team. Let's say, for example, we discussed, basically every company is now going for a multi-cloud architecture. When you basically go for a multi-cloud architecture, what happens? In the multi-cloud architecture, you have to learn AWS, at least 2 platforms you have to learn. Once you learn 2 platforms, you will be able to, yes, definitely CCSP is worth it. I am coming to that. Yeah. So in the multi-cloud architecture, you have to learn at least 2 cloud platforms, first of all. And more than learning 2 cloud platforms, how to integrate them. Integration is the key you have to learn. How to integrate these cloud platforms, how to integrate on-premises tools with cloud, how to integrate your SIEM solution, monitoring solution with the cloud platform. All these things are very important for us. Okay, that's it. And definitely CCSP or CCSK is a different level. That means that in AWS or Azure certification, we are focusing on how to implement things on the particular cloud provider. But in CCSP, we are defining the strategies for that. Like for example, how we have to basically, plan it. Like for example, what is the strategy we have to follow as per the management perspective. So that's the next one. One more thing I want to tell you on this. So more than certificate, the skills are very important. But basically, for any person who want to pursue the security specialty or any specialty certification, I strongly recommend you start with at least 1 associate level certification. Don't have to write the exam, but I am telling you is, you have to get the knowledge of either AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate or AWS Certified SysOps Administrator if you want to focus on specialty level certifications. Otherwise, what happens is, you will basically have a lot of glitches in between. Otherwise, you must have experience to find. That's it. And this year, I am basically expecting the most demanding certifications. As per the industry, I am basically expecting the professional one, the security one, the machine learning one, and these things are basically going to hit the market. And see, CompTIA Cloud Plus, and all these things are basically vendor neutral certification, which is giving you overview on the cloud security and cloud architecture strategies. But like CCSK is purely cloud vendor neutral, CCSP is purely vendor neutral. But here what happens is, I am focusing on how to implement things on the AWS. Okay, that's it. If you go to CompTIA Cloud Plus, you will be able to get an overview about how to implement everything in the cloud platform in a more overview point of thing. Yeah, so basically what happened, there is no specific certification in Azure which is exactly like the AWS. But what happens is, you have certification called AZ 500, Azure Security Technologies. So basically, going to the certification, you will basically get the very good idea of Azure. But definitely and just one more thing, for non-technical people who basically want to start with the cloud platform, either you can go for AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner, or you can basically go for Azure AC900. So both of these things are very much fundamentals, which will give you overview about all the cloud services in the cloud plus specific cloud platforms. But if you want to specifically go for a cloud zone, like I want to be a security expert in cloud, you can start with the AWS architect level exam. Then you can go for the security specialty exam. We can't compare AWS certified security specialty and CCSP. The reason is because I'll give a simple example. So now I'm telling you, so let's say you are in my AWS session. I'm telling you, so team, this is how you implement, or this is how you implement security for data in AWS platform. I will show you, I'll go to the console, I'll show you the options and policies and the security features and all. But in CCSP, I will tell you, okay, these are the factors you have to keep in mind while managing a team of for driving the process. Like for example, for implement data security, you have to ensure data residency, you have to implement access control, you have to implement RBAC. So I am telling you that in a strategic perspective, generically in CCSP, as a person who is managing the whole team and process. But in AWS, I'm showing you how to implement it. That's all. And if you go to CCSP or any certification, the primary thing is you have to purely have a hands-on expertise. So for getting a hands-on, I strongly recommend you either go for this or this. Then you can focus, like either you can focus on the professional, you want to be a cloud architect, you can focus on the AWS certified. And to be honest, if you basically want to say yourself as a cloud architect, this is something which can help us a lot because it will cover everything you need. The same thing we studied in the associate architect, more advanced in professional, that's all. This will give you a very good idea. Or you can, after this, you can basically focus on the AWS certified security specialty or AWS certified database specialty based on your background. Like if you can ask me, like Krish, what is the next step for a security professional? So that is pure generic. We can't basically say it specifically to a generic perspective. We have to say it basically on the person's experience and background purely. Okay, that's it. So that's about the things which I want to tell you, team. Just today, I just want to give you an overview about all these things. But more than that, understand that certification is just the starting point. More than certification, what we have to understand is the skills. Like for example, how much more skills you can get, that much more value you can get. And one more thing about the InfoSec, we are not basically focusing on the exam. We are not, the primary focus of all the sessions we are taking is not only the exam. Exam is very easy for everyone who basically have a concepts clear. So in this thing, we are focusing more on the hands-on perspective and completely how it works in the real time. That's what we are focusing on. And once you know how to do things in a real time in the cloud platform, then you don't have to worry about certification, how to do the certification, because you already have a skill. Certification is very easy for you. Okay, that's it. And if you have any queries, feel free to ping us. We'll be there to support you on that. Okay, this is a very short session, just to want to wind up this year with a session and updates. That's why we basically organize this. So thank you so much, team. Wishing all of you a very happy new year, and happy to see that there is a lot of people basically coming to cloud, and this year will be the year of cloud, definitely. Perfect. Thanks everyone.